So cool. Thanks for coming in today, Andrew. Please make yourself at home. Help yourself get anything in the fridge.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your gym, please.
Yeah. So back, 9 and some odd months ago, 9 years and some odd months ago, um, we opened up Mat Chess Mixed Martial Arts, um, and before that, that's where I met you. We were in a garage space before that, and which was fantastic. But yeah, but it's been a bit over 9 years now that we've had commercial space. And yeah, the fundamental goal of it too was that I wanted to teach martial arts a bit differently than what I think was being done. And I thought there was space for that. And I also wanted a space to train how I thought was most efficient. So that was kind of its foundation. And it's just been a fantastic journey, and very fortunately have met some fantastic folks and students who have really pushed themselves and have pushed me as a result too. So it's been a great journey.
Yeah, nice. I mean, that's one thing I really noticed. Like, I think at that time, I think when I met you it was about 2008, and compared to what we know now about mixed martial arts and jujitsu, it's kind of like the Stone Age in my opinion, just like what we know. And like, if you had a good teacher back then in 2008, you were pretty freaking lucky, I think, because it's like a hard combination of somebody that knows how to, you know, compete and work well and can actually like teach you what you need to know. And just from a couple times I worked together, I was like, this guy is something different. And
Mm. Yeah.
yeah, the way you taught, and you said, "Well, I am a teacher," and I was like, "Oh, dude, I never thought about you actually need to be able to teach jujitsu." It's like it totally blew my mind. I never thought about that. I always
Mm.
thought, oh, maybe I didn't like, maybe I should run more, or maybe I should do more reps of this arm bar or whatever. But um, I liked how you kind of actually like, let's do it with some resistance and do some situations. And I was like, yeah, because when I roll, it never freaking happens like that, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was wondering, how much of your educational background were you able to kind of incorporate into your jujitsu instruction?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and for your audience too. So I taught for 9 years too, primarily in the Edmond School District. I taught history and philosophy there, and started the philosophy program at Linwood High, which I'm really proud of.
Oh, wow.
And some years ago, I when my wife and I started our coffee shop, we had to something had to give. So my academic career and teaching stopped then. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to learn from teaching academics because academics is always systematized, and it's always been that way, and it's always taken a lot of information and organized it into something that is consumable by the student, and it's always been that way. And so whereas I think of a lot of the jiu-jitsu classes too that I've seen, they didn't always have that. Oftentimes, I was very fortunate in that I learned from Dave Ginsburg, who is a fantastic teacher. I learned from many other martial artists. Jimmy Hattori too is a fantastic teacher. But I also had classes from other folks too that felt like they were more like, this is a random technique, and after that random technique, here will be another random technique. So and then it was up to the student to organize that information into something consumable.
Right.
And unless you're programmed that way,
Mm-hmm.
then that's difficult. And I think fortunately I am programmed a certain way, that I'm able to take in information and organize it,
Mm-hmm.
but then and then condense it down into something that is digestible by the student, and then push that into classes. And so um, so it's so academics has always done that, whereas I think jujitsu now is doing that more and more, and
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's just a benefit to the student. I think it's something that should have been done earlier and recognized earlier. I think
Mm-hmm.
because we've been teaching that way forever. I think there was a bit of a bit of laziness on the jiu-jitsu teacher's part to
Uh-huh.
on that organization. But fortunately, through my education, again, I had that, and I then when I didn't have that when I moved here to back to Seattle, like I wanted to create it for my students. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Oh, so that's an interesting perspective. So it's like it's not anything new. Like
yeah, I think
that's
so.
kind of
Yeah, if you hopped into any of my colleagues' history classes, it would have a good organization to it. It would be organized thematically. It would be organized chronologically. It would have a progression to it. It would
mm-hmm.
have one concept would lead into the other, and then suddenly, so much of what was being taught from a martial arts perspective was just kind of devoid of that. And then it was really the student who was required to then take these random bits of information and slowly assemble them over the course of time, where that could have been prepackaged.
Huh.
And that I think I'm pretty reasonable at that.
Well, I think that's pretty modest for you to say. Um yeah, but I think the whole attitude of martial arts, like the Mr. Miyagi wax on, wax off. You don't know why. You're waxing his car and doing all this stuff. I mean, it makes a compelling story, and possibly it could serve a purpose as like weeding out the people that are really in it for the wrong reasons.
Mm,
But nowadays, I just think it should be more people should be able to do it and like excel and like make themselves better. I understand the journey of it's interesting, like you said, like some people may be programmed to like they just handle information better, but I'm freaking not. I take forever to learn stuff. I learn almost completely by accident. So if somebody can like arrange like a
mm,
structured plan, but still have the flexibility to kind of know who I am, that is something like really amazing. And I don't think you see a lot of that. I think
mm.
it's becoming a little bit more prevalent. I think because of how much we share stuff, but I still think it's pretty rare.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But I think it's becoming more common now that I think people I think before there were fewer options too that students had, and
Hmm.
now there are more, and that just leads to people needing to take their craft, I think, just more seriously too.
Okay. So how is your like training, or at least how you teach, what you expect of your students, or what they expect of you? Has any of that changed like in the past 10 years?
Um, I mean, so I think my gym is pretty unique in that we have a real wide range of students too. So we have people who compete and compete at a world level, and especially in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But then we also have people who are just hobbyists and that enjoy training and that's what they want to do. And we have people that just came in that are uncertain about even what it is, and they try it out for the first day. So that model of a wide range of students has been ever present throughout the gym, and um, so in that sense, you know, student expectations I don't think have really changed. I mean, student knowledge most certainly has. I mean, when I started this back in 2011, it was myself and then I had a blue belt student, and then a bunch of white belts, and
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just very different than now, where, we have some incredibly high level people. And, we have Sean Weisenberg, who's incredible, just received his black belt, incredible competitor, incredible, beautiful jiu-jitsu. We have my wife, Sen, who is an incredible leg lock player, incredible pressure game. We have Jerry, who has a very unique turtle game. That's and has great top pressure too, and can play really quick and explosive. We have Noah, who has unbelievable base, and incredible butterfly guard. We have Katie, who has a fantastic butterfly player, top pressure player. Clay, who is now on a bit of a sabbatical. He's paragliding, who's a
Okay,
fantastic.
that's something like not you hear every day. Oh, he's just
Yeah, no,
paragliding.
he's a
You know
fantastic
that dude.
person.
He's got a paraglide.
But he's got just a really dynamic grip game too. A good speed pass, good pressure pass game. We have Bruce, who's an amazing leg lock player too. I mean, we just have these are just the brown and black belts that we have, and you know when you compare what we have now to what we had then, it's very different. And so, in that sense, my role as a teacher obviously has changed over the course of that time, um, but we still have that influx of students that are new too.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, it has remained, but the same. But obviously, the needs of those high level students I just talked about to um, it's just different. They need refinement. They need small details. They need little refinements on the games that they do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and those games they're far more expert at than I am too.
Hmm.
And because they have refined them so much more than what I ever could to. I have my core game that I'm hyper refined at, but
Mm-hmm.
they have a game that they are too. So my role there is definitely adapted over time, um, and but I still have the teaching the mass movement part to new students as well, and then I have more high level students that have different needs.
That's awesome. Like, cause at least far as I remember, a lot of times like, oh, this one gym, they're just like a leg lock gym, or they're just like a traditional jujitsu gym. They'll just do like close guard and like, yeah, there's like, it's so great that like you're so excited about each one of your independent students like skills. Not like, oh, that leg lock game is bullcrap. You need to learn some like good fundamental guard or whatever. I mean, I'm assuming they do have fundamentals, but where they excel, it seems like you're encouraging them to go in different directions.
Oh yeah, that's a big. So it's kind of my view um, of the belt system, and my view of learning anything, jiu-jitsu included, is kind of follows that same path, which is like white belt is going white to blue, in my view, is going from ignorance to kind of knowing everything to becoming the library. So to put
Mm-hmm.
that in academic sense, is where you do your literature reviews, where you read everything, where you have to know all the movements of
Hmm.
shit. It doesn't mean you need to be hyper refined in any of them, but
Ah.
you know everything. Going from white to blue, you should, in my view, you go from knowing nothing to knowing all the moves. And there's nothing, I feel like there's no movements that a blue belt that I know that a blue belt doesn't. But then, in my view, going from blue to purple is then that's where you start to become a specialist. And
Huh.
um, for me, that specialization was, at that time I was a butterfly player, and an omoplata player, and a pressure player. Well, today I am a butterfly and some half guard and some one butter player and an omoplata player and a pressure player. So,
Okay.
that core has remained for 10 years now
Oh wow.
for me. So, but then when I look at my students too, that specialization, that purple belt specialization, um, has to be unique to them. They can't just like adapt to my style and be like, okay, I'm going to force this to work. So, I have, I have fantastic students who have very different specializations than me.
Mhm.
Kyle, for example, one of my students, Kyle, is purple belt, fantastic leg lock player. My wife Sen is a leg lock player too, amongst other things. We have another student, Bruce, is again another leg lock player. Like legs have not been a primary focus of my game. My students, I think the open-minded nature of me at that level when you achieve high blue belt is about experimentation and finding what suits you really well. And for me, that's always been a really open process. And I think
Mhm.
that has led to a really wide range of hyper skilled people in their particular
Hmm.
slices. And so I'm very fortunate because, I get to train with people who have different specializations than me. And then some of that rubs off on me then too. So yeah, I'm pretty fortunate.
Hmm. That's cool, especially because like I have things that I think I'm good at, and then every once in a while I go to a tournament or something, and then oh crap, this guy's actually better at that than me, so maybe I need another option.
Mm,
For instance, like I used to like being on bottom, but I avoid it like the plague lately. But
mm,
now, every now and then, I go with some another top person. I'm like, ah, crap. Am I gonna wear myself out fighting for the top all the time, or am
mm,
I gonna have different options? And I'm kind of like, oh, I think I gotta go back to at least refining my bottom game as an option because all that scrambling, you might need a little refrain, like just to kind of
mhm.
get your breath back and yeah. So that's really cool. Um, we'll keep this pretty short. But I was kind of curious about how your Zoom classes were working and how you were of course, I'm sure you can't do everything, but I was wondering if there was any kind of unique benefits that maybe online offers or what kind of not so benefits.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic has definitely been difficult on on jiu-jitsu as you can't reach out and grab somebody.
Right? It's probably the
So
worst worst thing you
yeah,
could do.
so that's difficult when you're trying to teach Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And so what we have been focusing on are a couple of different things too. So one is we've gone back to kind of the fundamental forms of jiu-jitsu. So like we've been working on bridging, shrimping, slapping out, standing up, basic fundamental movements, and then I've been adding like little details as we move so that hopefully when we come back, those small refinements will maintain themselves.
Hmm.
And whereas, when you're just sparring or even when you're looking at, specific positional work, um, it's not looking at the bridge itself, which can be applied to all sorts of different positions. So my hope is that once we do that, we're going to be able to go back and then apply that to a wide range. And my hope is that there's some good benefit there.
Hmm.
The other part too is we've been looking at uh, what I a segment. We're doing Zoom in 1 hour classes. My cat who always needs pets. Um, so we've been looking at trying to do an hour class through Zoom, which I think is pretty unique
Hmm.
in 20-minute segments to try to keep the interest and the pacing correct.
Hmm.
I think otherwise it gets a bit stale. And so, um, one of the segments in there that I've been teaching to is boxing for jiu-jitsu nerds.
Boxing
And
for jujitsu nerds. Hmm.
yeah, yeah. And I think, with the goal is, we have there's a lot of talk about jiu-jitsu losing its self-defense practicality.
Oh.
And
Mhm.
so, I wanted to take some time while we're not able to grab onto someone and look at, okay, how do we feel a bit more comfortable on the feet? How do we force clinches and force takedown opportunities,
Ah, okay.
using boxing and also ringsmanship to be able to pin someone, cut off the ring, pin someone?
Mhm.
And it's always been my belief that um, once on the ground, once
Yeah.
on the ground, if you've been training jiu-jitsu for a year, someone new is going to be very easy to control unless they're exceptionally athletic.
Yeah.
But getting there, meaning wrestling, judo, and also getting to those wrestling and judo positions, meaning
Ah, if you
Muay
don't
Thai,
get
boxing,
there. Yeah.
is the real self-defense part in my view. I've
Yeah.
always I've always felt that the self-defense as like, if someone grabs your shirt, you do this,
And it
was
always works, right?
legitimate.
It always works, or I wouldn't teach you that. Grab me this way, not this way, you idiot. Your
Yeah,
back's good.
yeah. I always felt that was a bit disingenuous, but so I wanted to look at, okay, how do we look at boxing footwork that is there to close a distance,
Mhm.
cut off the ring, close a distance, force clinching, force wrestling shots. And so we're kind of working from the ground, meaning, zero, just
Mhm.
basic stance work, all the way up to combining boxing strikes with shooting, boxing strikes with clinching,
Mhm.
work that's necessary to get there. So that's been a focus of the class as well. And yeah, that's something that maybe we wouldn't have focused as much on if
Mhm.
we were in a class where we could grab onto one another.
Right.
But so in that sense, it's a benefit, I suppose. And I hope students find it of use.
Well, you can't deny the dynamic of grabbing and hitting. I mean, that's why you see crazy stuff like, I don't know, Kevin Randall been knocking out Mirko Krokop.
Mm,
Everybody's like, "Oh, he
yep,
must be a better kickboxer." It's like, no, that punch worked because Mirko Krokop was damned if he was going to get took down.
yep,
So he was
yep.
worried about that, and then the hand hit him.
Hook. Yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep.
So I mean, not saying you need to be at that level, but just take in consideration there are things to consider when you're getting hit. It doesn't change everything, but it changes a lot of things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um.
so we've been working on that. We've been taking some time to work on some strength and conditioning and yoga stuff, which perhaps we wouldn't have been doing otherwise. So it's because we have to train differently. It's kind of forcing us to look at other things that we may have otherwise neglected. So in
Mhm.
that sense, it's a benefit. But yeah, I mean, you can't. Uh, um, I would never elect to teach a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu class through Zoom if I had other
Mhm.
options.
Right.
But that said, there are valuable things to be doing, and our goal from the beginning of the gym is to provide students their maximum benefit for their tuition, and
Mhm.
so we're going to do that no matter the circumstances.
Well, what I wonder is, assuming everything goes back to some level of normal, if now that all of us have gotten used to these online lessons, would it still be like a possible route kind of as a supplement? Like let's so say, oh, I can't make it to the gym today. Of course, that's the best thing to train, right? But
Sure.
can I just do a Zoom call? Would that be something that a lot of gyms or yourself might want to do, or do you think you just need to get back to just a gym?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. We had thought a while back too about, like, should we be recording classes, and maybe the fact that we're just more comfortable with the technology now too means it's an easier thing to do. Um, I think how I teach too is based on a weekly curriculum. So, if you miss a day, then you miss a portion of that. And we have a little review every day too. So, if you're coming in if you're coming in twice, 3 times a week, like you're getting a nice spectrum of that. But if you come in one day, like maybe you're not getting the full gamut of what we're doing, and maybe you're not getting the full strategy of what we're doing. And so, in that sense, having access to some online content may be of value, and maybe something that we do. But I think in my view, the real jiu-jitsu lies in the sensitivity. I mean, the fact that, as I said before, I'm of the view that a blue belt knows all the movements that I do. So if we look at that progression there of maybe, 8 years from blue to black, what is that progression then? It's, in my view, it's not learning mass movement. It's learning sensitivity and timing and pressure and tension and all of those things. And so those aspects are the only way you really have access to those things is through training with people live and with movement. And we can do some things and some memorization aspects now with Zoom, and we're doing that. But there will in my view, there will never be a replacement for live training, of course. Yeah.
So I can't get my black belt on Zoom.
Should ask Henry Gracie, not me, man.
Oh man. So I was hoping you'd give me some easy answers, Andrew, but everything you're saying, like, it's a lot of hard work and practice. God.
I know you should. I'm telling you, you should get her on here.
I was totally willing to buy that snake oil on the back of your truck, but then you had to like break it down for me and make it sound hard.
I know. I'm sorry.
Well, cool. I mean, since you got to go to a lesson, maybe we'll just wrap it up here. Is the cat still around?
Shade, yeah, Shade's always around. I think he's left now, but
did he lose interest? Okay.
Oh, yeah, for the time being, I suppose.
Okay. Well, maybe we can get him on next time.
Excellent.
Yeah. So is there anything that you wanted to mention, or?
Well, how have you been? My gosh, I haven't seen you in like a decade.
Yeah, by the way, I'm in Japan. My wife got work out here, and then I've been here and I've been teaching English, and I've kind of been working on different certificates, and then I was like even thinking more about the educational side of things, and so I was like, another reason why I kind of wanted to reach out to you too, because like it seems like all the things before, when you didn't know how you learn, was just like going by, and it's like, oh, that's totally why I didn't get this at all, And so I've been thinking a lot more about the process lately, and now I actually have to teach more and realize sometimes like I'm just not connecting and trying to find out why, whether it's been English. I mean, I've taught judo, and I'm sure I had times in then when I just wasn't like really at the right level with whatever my students were. So yeah, I'm here in Japan now, and that's kind of the news with me. But yeah, I think I hope we should just call when you have time, catch up. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and pretty much just about every single thing you talked about there. I'm sure we could talk about each single concept for an hour.
Anytime.
Cool.
Well, that's good. Well, I'm glad you're doing well, and I hope you're safe during these unusual times too.
Yeah, I've been fortunate. It hasn't changed my life too much, except for my wife's working at home. It's actually, like I said, been kind of a catalyst to get a little bit more familiar with online content. And I thought, oh, I'm going to be so behind. Everybody's learning it. But there's still some people that are like fighting it. They're like, oh, I'm not going to learn. But now I feel like I know so many things I didn't know a month ago. And if there's any silver lining, I'm sure everybody's saying this. I'm glad this gave me that kind of, what do you say, impetus, or that thing that makes you do something.
Impetus?
Impetus? Is that the right word?
I'm not sure where you're going, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely motivation. is definitely forcing us to do it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, well, thanks, man. Let's talk again soon and keep me updated.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Glad you're well.
You too.
Bye, man.